Hey there, I'm Jesse, and you're listening to the Deep Lore Boys podcast, where me, Matthew, and Jackson delve into the random, rare, and often ridiculous pieces of human history. As the cannibalism rates in America go down, we are fighting the Wendigo epidemic.
He just climbed over a 9-foot wall while supposedly cackling.
There's a sense of tragic camaraderie there.
It is.
We got nothing left. We scare them.
I'm gonna turn the lights off in this room so that I pee my pants.
Dude, my pants are already peed. Oh. I'm quaking right now. I'm shaking.
Dude. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a very spooky edition of the Deep Lore Boys podcast. By the time we upload this, it should be either Halloween or somewhere close to Halloween, one of those, and we decided to take advantage of the times. The first piece of spooky lore that we're going to go over today is actually a listener-requested topic. The Wendigo.
The Wendigo.
The Wendigo is a creature from Native American folklore. They were evil spirits that would haunt and sometimes possess people. People could also turn into a Wendigo, and they were obsessed with devouring flesh, drinking blood, just gluttonous, flesh-eating, nasty monster behavior. You know the kind.
Yeah, they seem to kind of bestow their cannibalistic tendencies upon you and the people they're around. Okay, so the description of the Wendigo, according to folklore, we can just read it straight from the wiki here, actually. It says, the Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation, so skinny fella. Its desiccated skin pulled tightly over its bones, with its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and bloody, unclean and suffering from the suppuration of the flesh. The Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption.
That is pretty spooky. And it's like a humanoid thing with antlers. That's most often how it's depicted.
I don't know. There's no mention of it having like a deer head.
So what my guess is that there was a lot of different Native American legends that all sort of had a Wendigo-like being in there. And then over the years, they just sort of all merged into this one thing. And then we call that a Wendigo, which is why there's so many different versions of what this thing actually is.
Yeah, so there is no solid, specific Wendigo. Like, if you're looking, we know Bigfoot kind of look like a big monkey or something like that.
Yeah.
The Wendigo, it varies a lot, sometimes being as simple as just a skinny-looking dude, like a ghost, and sometimes being as far as like a 12-foot tall monster with a deer skull for a head and stuff like that. But it generally seems to follow the same key themes of cannibalism, and I guess not really cannibalism because it's not a human, so if it eats humans, it's not.
I think, though, because humans can turn into a Wendigo is the story, and that's if they have like cannibalistic or even just greedy and selfish tendencies.
Oh, no, okay, so if you get really greedy, you can turn into a Wendigo.
Oh.
Or Wendigos could be created if a human resorts to cannibalism, or you could turn into a Wendigo just by being in contact with one for too long.
There's many ways to become a Wendigo.
It has like radioactive power.
It has like its energy seeps out. Well, the thing is, Wendigo psychosis is a real thing.
Oh yeah, that's an actually spooky. I keep using the word spooky. I need to stop. It is a legitimately frightening condition, mental condition. It is characterized by symptoms such as an intense craving for human flesh and an intense fear of becoming a cannibal.
Oh. You want human flesh, but you don't want to become a cannibal.
Yeah. That's the creepiest part of it.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of makes sense. Is like if you're constantly obsessed with consume flesh, right? But at the same time, you don't really want to. It becomes this like inner battle, I guess. No cases have been properly studied. It hasn't been around, but it's definitely reported. It definitely happens.
Well, if you could become one by being in contact with them, my guess is that you wouldn't know that you were in contact with them. So it might be like a skinwalker.
Well, no, I think you would be. Okay, so look at this. There's a story here. Yeah, this is a story from the natives themselves, which is pretty cool. So I'll just read it straight from the wiki for you guys. One time, long ago, a big Wendigo stole an Indian boy, but the boy was too thin, so the Wendigo didn't heat him up right away. But he traveled with the Indian boy, waiting for him till he'd get fat. The Wendigo had a knife, and he'd cut the boy on the hand to see if he was fat enough to eat, but the boy didn't get fat. They traveled too much. Oh, so he goes and he takes the kid to another village. The kid told them there was a Wendigo around.
Because he sat there. The Wendigo sat there.
Yeah, the Wendigo sat there and watched, I guess.
That's an amateur mistake.
No, dude, I like to think the Wendigo just like stood at like the brink of the woods and just like stood there and watched. But yeah, so he just stood there watching, and then the kid brought people back to the Wendigo, and they cut off his legs, and then walked away and just left him. And then they came back a little while later and found him drinking the marrow from the inside of his bones.
From his
because
own
he was
legs.
that hungry. From his own legs. Yeah, he was just drinking his own legs. And then they asked the Wendigo if there was any fat on his legs. And he says, "You bet there is. I have eaten a lot of Indians. No wonder they are fat." And then the Indians killed him and cut him up into pieces.
If the Wendigo is supposed to be thin, like he didn't eat the kid because he was thin, but then he ate his own legs?
Well, because
his
thin,
legs
but
were
he's
fat. Because he had eaten a lot of Indians.
He's like Squidward with the thighs
Also,
after he eats all the Krabby Patties.
I guess.
Dude, all the weight was just going to his thighs.
Then why did he want to eat even more? He's like, he said, I've eaten loads of Indians, so no wonder. Like...
So I think he appears skinny, but he's actually fat, is what it's saying, is that he looks skinny because he's constantly
But there's a lot of fat in there, though.
But he's dense, I think.
There's like more fat per fat, you know?
Yeah, the fat per, like, cubic gram or whatever it is.
Cubic
So
gram.
that I kind of get. Dude, this Wendigo could have been, like, this could have been the best team ever, and he kind of threw it out the window here.
Okay, the idea of, like, a Wendigo walking through the woods with just some kid like that feels like a really nice two-player D&D party.
What?
It does. It really does.
Honestly,
Like,
I
you
guess
cannot
I
tell
can
me.
kind of see it.
Except for the fact that the Wendigo is trying to eat the kid and they don't really get along. And the Wendigo also would take a knife and cut the kid on the wrist to, I guess, gauge if the kid was fat enough to be eaten.
Does the wrist really gain that much fat, though? Like, let's think about
The Wendigo
this.
could judge, I guess.
So Wendigo
I don't
apparently
know.
knew what he was doing.
Yeah,
I
he
know,
knew
like,
what he... Oh, no, not the wrist, the hand.
Okay, but even the hand, like, the hand doesn't gain that much
I mean,
fat.
he could tell.
Can't you just
whatever it
eyeball
was.
it? Like,
No,
do
he
you
had
need to
to-
cut
he
him
had to
open?
prove
Can't you
it.
just be like, how many chins he got?
I don't how many chins he
Like,
got.
Like,
Wendigo
isn't
was
that a
like, once
better
he
way to
has
do it?
4 chins, that's how you know he's a
That's
Redditor.
how I know.
So what I did hear about is that there's some sort of, like, taboo ceremony.
There is a section on the Wikipedia just called Taboo Reinforcement Ceremony. Oh, it says it's a satirical ceremonial dance performed during times
satirical.
of famine to reinforce the seriousness of the Wendigo taboo. I think the ceremonial dance is satirical, but the ceremony itself is still very, like, hey guys, don't forget about
Okay.
the Wendigo.
He real.
See, the Wendigo to me, unfortunately, it almost has like the same status of spookiness as Siren Head, where I can be like, yeah, you know, I'm sure this was spooky at one
Siren
point, but then the
Head.
internet got to it and it's just been
Yeah.
way overdone. Kind
I
of how
was
I feel about
a
it.
huge fan of Siren Head back before a bunch of children got a hold of it. And
Yeah, that's the thing with the
Yeah,
Wendigo. I mean,
was.
it's
Yeah.
super cool, and I recognize like that it is a legitimately spooky monster from real folklore, but
yeah,
I wish the internet didn't know that. So, interesting final detail about my man the Wendigo here. It looks like the vast majority of supposed Wendigo sightings have happened between the 1800s and 1920s, and very few reports have surfaced since then. So I'm thinking here that as the cannibalism rates in America go down, we are fighting the Wendigo epidemic
dude.
at the same time. So
This is how we stop Wendigos.
Yeah,
Just Don't eat
absolutely.
each other.
it is upsetting that we will have lost a really, really great cryptid, though.
Well, if we ever like really need the Wendigo, we can just eat a few people. And it'll probably
That's
come
true.
back.
We can get
So,
him back.
That's
like,
true.
We could always get him back.
Yeah, he ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, he'll be around.
So this was a story that a lot of people have heard about, or sort of just heard like a little bit about, maybe from like people at school or like from some of their friends. But most
I
people
haven't
don't really
heard about
know
it.
entirely what happened in this story. This battle is called the Attack of the Dead Men,
Jackson, you have to
and I didn't
discuss it
really
like
think that there
those
was any
horror
better time to
channels on
discuss
YouTube, be
this.
like,
So hold on, is it August 6th?
1915.
August
Hold on.
6th,
Okay, hold on.
1915.
Okay.
You have to tell this like it's a scary story.
All right,
Jackson.
get
you can't
ready,
just
okay.
explain it. You can be like, you see, this is like, all right, take your voice
So-
deeper.
You gotta be
Spook
really,
the
really
audience.
spooky.
Fine, I'll spook the audience, but
Spook
then
the
I can't
audience.
spook the audience if I'm constantly being criticized by you either.
Okay, well, get it ready.
All right. On August 6th, 1915, the Germans decided to attack a base in what is now northeastern Poland. This base, also known as the Osawik Fortress, I may be pronouncing that wrong, but I do not know, was currently occupied by the Russians. The Germans decided to basically go all out on this attack and got 14 battalions of infantry and used siege guns and artillery. And the artillery were launching several different chemicals, including poison gas. And the poison gases mixed together, and once the Russians breathed them in, it sort of like mixed with the fluid in their lungs, and they started coughing up blood. Their skin began to like corrode, so they looked
It was
kind of like
nasty.
zombies. So that's why this name, the Attack of the Dead, came from. So the Russians ended up leaving this fortress and attacking the Germans outside of it. And the Germans were so scared at the appearance of the Russians that they turned around, fled, and ended up getting caught in their own barbed wire.
And then the zombies closed in.
The Germans, I believe, actually lost this attack because of this.
Yeah, and as far as I understand, the Germans, they bombed the crap out of this fortress.
Yeah,
and they went
just
in thinking like,
dumped
all
on
right,
this
yeah, we'll
place.
just, kick aside some of the rubble and clear it. Everybody in here is dead. And then the Russians just out of nowhere came up looking like a bunch of zombies and kicked their butts, which
Dude.
is just
Which is
awesome.
actually really admirable. Like,
it's cool.
go for it. Like, I respect that a lot. Imagine, like, you are dying, because all these men here were literally dissolving. They
They were not
dying.
doing so good.
Okay, and they, instead of just hunkering down in this fort, they were like, dude, I look scary, man. You look scary. Ooh. And then they got up, they're like, hey, guys, biggest prank of all time. And they just run out. Like, there's a sense of, like,
Ooga booga booga booga
tragic,
booga.
ooh, like, there's a sense of tragic camaraderie there. Of just, like,
It is.
we got nothing left. We scare them. Like,
So I don't want
Yeah.
to understate the
It really-
fact that Russia, I mean, obviously, if they look like zombies, people would assume that they took losses. But I also don't want to understate the fact that a lot of the Russians died immediately after
Yeah.
this attack.
Oh, yeah.
From what I'm seeing here, the 9th, 10th, and 12th divisions were supposedly completely out of action.
yeah.
By
they
the
were
time-
Oh
destroyed,
yeah,
so.
I mean this was nasty chemical warfare, and they came out looking like zombies, not just in the sense that their skin was green; it looked like Frankenstein. It was like, oh my goodness,
Yeah, they were-
you are.
They were
dissolving,
literally
sir.
dissolving while they were fighting.
Cool thing here is that, as far as I can tell, the Germans had been hammering this base for a long time. Like, this wasn't their first attempt
Yeah,
at
they'd
taking
been
it
going
down.
at it,
They
so.
had been trying and trying. They rolled up with some of their biggest, best cannons, and they just couldn't do it. And then eventually, they called in the big guys. They started fighting dirty, kicking sand in their eyes and gas down their throat. And that's when Attack of the Dead Men happened. So imagine you're like, finally,
Yes, we got them.
those stupid Russians, we finally got them. And Russians just come out of the
come
trenches
back as
looking like the
zombies
dead.
and just, dude, what do you do when you think they're like, yeah, we got them, boys, and then just an army of zombies just walks across the trenches at you? Like, what do you do at that moment? Like,
Well, they turned and fled and
They ran.
fell into their own barbed wire.
Russia actually didn't hold on to this fortress for that much longer after the attack. They ended up abandoning it and actually destroyed most of the fort.
oh, they destroyed it before the Germans could get it.
Yes.
So not only
Oh,
did they
nice.
come back and scare the Germans away, but I mean, I guess at that point, yeah, like when, 8 out of the 9 dudes you have in this fort are now dead and the remaining ones are dissolving, like, just destroy the fort so that nobody can have it. Like, I admire that.
Okay, so there was this Russian lieutenant apparently in the 13th Company, which I think
Was
it
that
was the
Vladimir
remains of the
Karpovich?
13th Company, the survivors. Yeah, okay, the surviving soldiers of the 13th Company. Those are the guys that charged up looking like zombies. The lieutenant, he apparently during the attack was mortally wounded and handed over command of the compound to some other guy. And this other dude, his name was, Oh, it's a tough one. Strzemninski? Despite having severe gas poisoning, with the remnants of the company entrusted to him, carried the attack to the end, using bayonet tactics to take possession of the first and second sections of their position, and he died later that evening.
Oh,
No. Kotlinski died later.
Or yes, I'm sorry. Okay.
Strzemninski. He survived.
He survived. Yeah,
he
okay.
did.
So
Strzemninski survived.
So yeah, to sum all that up, basically, they counterattack looking like a bunch of zombies. The guy who's in charge of him is like, unga boonga. I can't go on. You, Strzemski, take on my sword and command these men. And he does. And he continued the attack to the end. And they fought off the Germans. And then later on, Commander Irwin passed away.
Rest in Commander Irwin. His name is not Irwin.
No, it's a reference to a show. I won't.
Okay.
I won't spoil it. If you don't get the reference, I won't spoil it.
My man Strzemski or whatever, he lived for a while. They have pictures of him afterwards, and he looks fine. Like, he doesn't look like he has anything. So it seems that to a degree, there were some people that managed to just, I guess, maybe like not breathe or something. You would think that in a battle like this, it would just be really brutal and nasty, and there's no way that it could have ended well, but the Russians still managed to pull kind of like a tragic W here.
Yeah, I wouldn't really say that any side here really
Nobody really won.
I mean, I wouldn't want to be the Germans in this situation either. Yeah. Definitely not. But I would also say that, like, the Germans may have died faster than most of the Russians and less painfully.
Okay, here's the thing. The Russians took more casualties, but they also got the last laugh in the end.
Yeah, I don't want to stereotype anybody, but I feel like for the Russians, the last laugh is almost just as good.
This is what they call the horrors of war, if you will.
Wait, Spring-Heeled Jack. You familiar with him?
What? What is Spring-Heeled Jack?
You don't know about Spring-Heeled Jack?
I have never heard of this guy.
Spring-Heeled Jack was this old, like, Victorian-era cryptid in England. And he was just this dude with, like, a cloak. And he could breathe fire, and he'd run around and just, like, open up the door and scare you. And he'd, like, breathe fire on you and then run away into the night.
He sounds kind of like he was more of a superhero, but, like, evil. So, like, a super villain.
He was literally like a comic book villain is what he was. Yeah, Spring-Heeled Jack is really funny because he wasn't so much like a monster or a creature. People thought he was like Satan, but then eventually it just became like, oh, watch out for Spring-Heeled Jack, whoever that maniac is running around.
So there were actual events where people met Spring-Heeled Jack.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, like I said, he was definitely, like, at some point there was a real person pulling pranks on people. The earliest tales of Spring-Heeled Jack were basically, there's a knock on the door. Woman goes to the door. Nobody's there. There's another knock on the door. She comes back. Oh, no, Oonga Boonga, it's Spring-Heeled Jack. And he'll, like, breathe green or blue fire in your face, which is probably just some weird, like, circus trick, and then run away. There were other times where he did grab people or, like, claw people, and those were, like, a little more violent, but he never killed anybody.
So it wouldn't really be that hard to be Spring-Heeled Jack. You just have to be really quick. Like, breathing fire is a thing that people can do. I guess, like, green and blue fire would be harder, and then you just need, like, sharpen your fingernails.
So go into an emo phase, and then go door to door, breathing fire into people's houses.
That's
literally just an emo guy with a flamethrower, and he just runs around.
Yep.
He jumped in front of a carriage, and then the coachman lost control and crashed. And then he just climbed over a 9-foot wall while supposedly cackling a high-pitched, ringing laughter. So what I'm really hearing there is just like him like running off like a Skeletor style, just like
yeah, he really did.
He seems like the typical like what I wish I could be if I was a goblin type thing. Except he's not a goblin, so he's more of a creep.
Yeah, he was definitely a mischievous fellow.
What a guy.
Wait, on the See Also page it says See Also and then Batman.
Yeah, Batman in here.
Just like him.
Yeah,
think Batman and the Joker combined, and that is basically Spring-Heeled Jack.
I don't even feel like this man is at all close to Dracula or Batman or anybody else we might compare him to. He just appears as like more of a joke. Like,
well, the thing is, in almost every instance, he's attacking women. He just
They're
runs
the
up.
easiest to scare.
Well, he's not scaring them. He's trying to like kidnap them and assault them. Like he's just a creep.
I don't know. I of course, we can't just ask him and find out, but in all the stories, he just kind of like attacks, maybe breathes some fire and like tries to grab or claw somebody and then runs off.
Yeah,
It's
he
usually, I
seems
don't
to
know that he
run.
actually was ever like had the intention to kidnap somebody. He just wanted to really, really scare him.
I think I don't know. I'm not sure if he would have taken things further or not. It's hard to really tell. It seems he would just kind of jump up, scare people, and leave. I don't know. This man he seems to be a silly fella. At the same time, he's got to chill.
Yeah, he's got to calm down a little bit.
Like,
you
okay,
know?
you can be silly, you can be goofy, you can do a little frightful behavior, right? That's all cool.
There's a time to be silly and there's a time to be serious is
Yeah.
something my man Larry the Cucumber said once.
This guy seems to have been a little too silly at times. For real though, I'm not sure I can even really say that he assaulted multiple women. To say that he got a little carried away is
Yeah,
So
it's
a lot of
an
the stories
understatement.
A lot of the stories here, though, have the women end up beating him off of them, and then he just runs off.
No, I like to think he's just there to scare him. I don't know, because I'll read directly from the Jane Alsop case. Basically, on the night of February 1838, I know I said I was going to read directly, but I'm just going to paraphrase. A police officer knocked on the door and was like, "Hey, can you bring a light? It's so dark." And so she went and got a candle and brought it to him and was like, "Wow, you're wearing a pretty big cloak." And then he threw off the cloak and was like, "Ah, I'm Spring Heel Jack." And he vomited blue and white flame from his mouth while his eyes resembled red balls of fire. He apparently
Dude.
wore a large helmet, and his clothing, which was very tight-fitting, resembled white oilskin. And then he caught hold of her and began tearing at her gown with his claws, which she said were of some kind of metallic substance. And then she screamed and got away from him, and he ran off, I guess. But I
He just
guess that
runs
she was
away.
bleeding. Says he tore at her arms and neck with his claws. So it got violent. I definitely don't want to say wish we had more people like this who are willing to just be goofy.
Yeah, like this
But,
is you can be goofy, you can be silly, and I would have nothing wrong with running around in a fun costume and goofing off. I don't know, pretending to be some cryptid or something. That's cool. But you can't take it that
This guy
far.
was
no,
like,
yeah.
what went wrong in this guy's childhood that he decided to just turn into that? Like,
Dude, what happened?
like sometimes I do think that humanity's evolved backwards, and like that would prove it.
That right there is a prime example. Well, what would you do? Think about it. If you guys were driven to the point of like, all right, that's it. It is time to be Spring-Heeled Jack. What would your getup be? What would you do?
Well, I think instead of harassing women, I'd like cause other problems, or like
Well,
I'd drop
okay, yeah, we'll get
I'd
that out
like
of the
drop
way.
a bomb in the chimney and be like, and people would be like, "No, why is there a bomb in my chimney?" And I'd be like,
You mean like
gotcha."
one of those little cartoon bombs, like a little smoke
Yeah, like
bomb,
one of
right?
those classic little like metal orbs with a string on the end. And I would just like
Okay.
toss that. I'd like toss that down the chimney and be like,
Right.
and they'd be like, "No!" And then I'd hop off across the rooftops of Victorian England as their house would blow up.
I would be Spring-Heeled Jack, but instead of going after women, I just kill narcissists.
Yeah,
Like,
you could be like a vigilante, but you have to be evil. Like you have to be doing this vile behavior.
No, yeah, this has to be mischievous. You can be Goblin, Satan, or Batman. And
Choose
Spring-Heeled
wisely.
Jack kind of got the best of all three, I think.
he got,
He got like
dude. He kind of
he took
is.
all
He's
three
like
of those and just combined them.
Spring-Heeled Jack is just like the combo.
I think it's really stupid that he is very often portrayed as this like super spooky, dark, demon-looking monster.
Yeah.
When really we all know he was just a mustache-twirling villain. I imagine him as bowler hat guy from Meet the Robinsons.
Yeah, dude, that's exactly who he is. To me,
What way-
he's a perfect cartoon villain.
Hi again, it's Jesse. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Deep Lore Boys podcast. You can find more episodes of our show on YouTube and Spotify, which we encourage you to share with your friends so we can grow the podcast. And drop a comment down below if you're feeling extra generous. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope your day is nothing short of interesting. Take care.
I'm going to go post that one on twitter.com.